Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us here today. And just a little background on Sister Cities International. We are a 58-year-old citizen diplomacy network that was started by President Eisenhower to bring together people after World War II to make sure that we met each other face to face. And he was a big proponent of people-to-people exchanges, and especially where cities are concerned. And I have one of his quotes here. He said that when he started this organization, he said he has two deeply held convictions unite us in common purpose. First is our belief in effective and responsive local government as a principal bulwark of freedom. And second is our faith in the great promise of people-to-people and sister city affiliations in helping build the solid structure of world peace and prosperity. So we have three wonderful mayors here today who actually you'll see different sizes and different areas of the country and how they look at themselves as a global city and use their sister city relationships. First, we have Mayor Nutter from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And Mayor Nutter is on his second term. You grew up in Philadelphia. Yep. He has also just completed his year-long tenure as the president of the United States Conference of Mayors, which represents about 1,300 U.S. cities with populations of 30,000 or more. Mayor Nutter also launched Cities United, an initiative aimed at creating partnerships between cities, nonprofits, and other stakeholders to combat violence and crime among African American men and boys. Mayor Nutter went to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania and was also previously on the Philadelphia City Council. So you are absolutely what we look at as a mayor who takes care of his own city.
Thank you.
And Mayor Strickland, who actually in Tacoma hosted our leadership conference last fall. And Mayor Strickland was born in Seoul and is a graduate of the University of Washington and holds a master's degree in business administration from Clark Atlanta University. She has professional experience in the private and public sectors and served as development officer for the Tacoma Public Library, worked with the American Cancer Society, Starbucks, J-Ray Communications, and Tacoma Public Utilities. You have also created the Mayor's Education Task Force to promote innovation, civic engagement, and improved outcomes for student achievement, and is truly a mayor with looking forward to having a global existence. You have a port, as does Philadelphia. And Mayor Cole, or former Mayor Cole of Carbondale, Illinois, is the chair emeritus of Sister Cities International. And he was also a downstate director for the United States Senator Mark Kirk of Illinois. And he served as the mayor of Carbondale from May 2003 through 2011. Also, Mayor Cole is now working with Pepsi in the Midwest, and we are very happy to have him here. And he will give you some insight as to not just what a small town mayor looks at as being a global city, but also looking at the network of sister cities. So thank you all for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
So Mayor Nutter, I'd like to start with you.
Okay.
When you go to Philadelphia, there is this beautiful Sister Cities Park.
Yeah.
There are people coming and going all the time. Why do you promote Philadelphia to the world?
Well, we think we have something to offer. As one of America's great cities, is of course the birthplace of freedom, liberty, and democracy in the United States of America. We have incredible history and one of the most historic square miles in the United States of America. There's only one place that you can actually see the Liberty Bell, and we own it. Independence Hall, we know, of course, the Declaration, the Constitution. When you talk about having big meetings anywhere in the United States of America, is the host of the first convention in the country. We've been doing that pretty well for the last 200 plus years. So, but it's also a Renaissance city. It's had to remake itself. Philadelphia was once, of course, called the workshop to the world. We made everything from Baldwin locomotives to Stetson hats and everything in between. The economy changed, population loss, decline in many of our communities, disinvestment, which started really in the 50s, and of course the flight to the suburbs. But over time, Philadelphia's remade itself into a great sustainability city, energy hub, education, medicine, life sciences, pharmaceuticals, and we've seen now population growth for the first time in 60 years. In the 2010 census, it actually started in the 07-08 in the estimates, population growth in 8, 9, validated in 10, growth in 11, 12, and 13. Philadelphia has the distinction of having the greatest percentage increase of millennial population of any major city in the United States of America. 5 medical schools, 101 colleges and universities, 300,000 students in the region. 1 out of every 5 doctors in the United States of America will do some part of his or her training in Philadelphia. And so the city is coming back. As you mentioned, we have a port. We had this little celebration just the other day. Our director of communications and city representative Desiree Peter-Campbell is here. You may have heard of, the 4th of July, and we host the largest free outdoor concert in the United States of America. So Philly's a lot of fun, and if you haven't been to Philadelphia in the last 3 to 5 years, you really have not been to Philadelphia. So we promote ourselves to the region, to the country, and to the world. Nancy Gilmore is here, our Sister Cities organization, Citizen Diplomacy International, promoting Sister Cities. We have 7, the first coming in 1964 in Florence. And I've been to 3 of our sister cities, and I've made a commitment during my tenure to actually get to all 7 to promote the city of Philadelphia on the international stage.
Mm-hmm. Mayor Strickland, how do you see Tacoma using its sister cities and being a global city?
Oh, absolutely. So some of you may not have heard of Tacoma, Washington, so let me give you some regional perspective. And this is relevant to the Brookings Institution's work that they're doing with global cities. So we are part of the Seattle-Tacoma-Bellevue metropolitan region. So this is a region of about 3.5 million people. We are what you would call a second city. So we are what Oakland is to San Francisco, what St. Paul is to Minneapolis. And that's a good thing for us. And so people sometimes say, what's it like to be in the shadow of Seattle? And I say, no, we bask in their glow, because there are a lot of good things that happen, and we're part of this amazing region in the Northwest. And for a city our size, we have amazing assets. We have 43 miles of shoreline. We have the 3rd largest port on the West Coast. We have the best park system in the United States, in my opinion. And we have an international population. So these are assets that are already there in our community. And I think back to the Dolly Parton quote, be who you are and do it on purpose. And so for us, it's about being proud of our identity, but also telling the world we have a fantastic story to tell. Tacoma has 12 sister cities across the world. And this is pretty phenomenal for a city our size. And I think that, as with all cities, some sister cities are very, very active and some are a little more dormant. So the conversation for me as mayor is, are there other opportunities for us to grow our sister city base, but also really working hard with the existing relationships that we have. We have an amazing story to tell about our relationship with Fuzhou, China, which I'll go into later during the other part of the questioning. But the conversation really is, every city in America, regardless of your size, can play on the global stage. And a lot of cities don't realize that. So for me as mayor, as the ambassador and spokesperson of the city, it is my responsibility to make sure that happens. And again, any city in America that wants to play globally has an opportunity to do so. So how do we do that? How do we form relationships? And how do we turn that into more foreign direct investment, more tourism, and more opportunities for local companies to gain access to international markets?
Now, Brad, Carbondale, Illinois, why? What's the purpose of going out and reaching out and building sister city relationships when you come from a fairly small town?
Right, for a community of our size in the 25 to 50,000 population range, we don't have the same resources or opportunities. We also don't have the same challenges that a Philadelphia or a Tacoma might have. But we have a presence in the world, and we heard earlier from Merrick about how you can establish that presence. And we're quoting Dolly more than she's ever been quoted probably before. But we're here in the Ronald Reagan building, and Ronald Reagan said, America is too great to have small dreams. And I think the small towns and the mid-sized cities really can look to that and develop themselves and say, we want to do this, we want to have this presence. And sister cities and the municipal relationships that develop from the sister city partnerships lead into economic development growth, arts and cultural exchanges, educational opportunities, and for a small-sized city to be able to enter the global stage and the global arena, this is a way to do it. and we can exercise relationships that may have been formed at the educational levels in higher education. For instance, Carbondale is a college town. Southern Illinois University has partnerships with NCKU in Tainan City, Taiwan. And so that is a partnership that expanded technical expertise exchanges, college student exchanges, engineering, information development and exchanges that built around energy and coal usage. And so there are ways that small towns can focus on the resources they do have to have a much greater footprint and presence in other countries through sister cities and through municipal relationships. That town may not have the Liberty Bell. They may have a Taco Bell, and that's good enough to get started.
That's all right. I mean, ring whatever you have.
Somebody will
It's
listen.
all good.
Right.
So Mayor Nutter, can you
Yeah.
give us some examples
Sure.
of how these, not just your sister city relationships, but how Philadelphia has become this global city as far as, education and business?
So through the sister city partnerships and relationships, and again, in December of 2012, I had the opportunity to speak. What started out as a speaking engagement for a sustainability forum with former Treasury Secretary Paulson, and it evolved into a 3.5 day business trip with Philadelphia business entities and nonprofit organizations, educational community, really kind of participating in that opportunity. Tianjin is our sister city, but we flew into Beijing, had the opportunity to ride the bullet train from Beijing to Tianjin, about 30 minutes, the same distance, they tell me, as from Philadelphia to New York. I mean, could you imagine if we had high-speed rail and I could get folks from 30 minutes between Philadelphia and our northern suburb, the city of New York? I mean, that would just be fantastic for us, right? So, but, there were Philadelphia Orchestra, our international musical ambassador, first orchestra to go to China after President Nixon kind of opened China to the United States of America. They were back to sign a 5-year residency agreement in that year, and now they have musical exchanges. They're in the midst of an Asia and European tour over the past few months, and so the opportunity for educational exchange. So we have in Philadelphia, we think we may have a unique aspect here, a sister city scholarship. So we have 10 colleges and universities in Philadelphia that give scholarships to students who come from our sister cities. Temple University is about to join that network, and with significant reduction in tuition costs and a scholarship to go with it. We have a sister city fellowship where, again, folks in primarily government sector or NGO sector can participate in Philadelphia city government from a number of our sister cities, and for a week, for a year, you decide what you want to do, and we've had officials come from those sister cities to shadow and work with folks who are in our municipal government. In November of last year, and Desiree was a part of this trip, we went to the UK. Pennsylvania's #1 trading partner is the UK. And so we have a number of companies in Philadelphia and in our suburbs, primarily in the pharmaceutical area, where we have a tremendous amount of business relationship. But we also then, 4 or 5 days in London, and then flew to Tel Aviv. Partnered with Mayor Holdai in Tel Aviv. We were working on student exchange opportunities. But it was also out of that trip that we met with Cami Perez at Pentango. And so in October of this year, we will host a 2-day summit for venture capitalists in Philadelphia, hosted and partnered with us by Cami Perez, bringing venture capital folks to Philadelphia about business exchange and relationships. And so whether it's a sister city relationship or some other international relationship, this is about business. And the mayors know, in many instances, our constituents believe that we should spend about 18 hours a day in our offices,
right.
never leave, and that we can somehow do business either by email or Skype or something. You have to go places. People do business with folks that they know and that they interact with. And so when CHOP wants to sign a partnership agreement in Israel among CHOP, Drexel, and Hebrew University, you have to be on the ground. I mean, you have to at least be in person to sign the document, right? So you have to let mayors and elected officials and others in the business community participate in these trips, but you have to go. And so they've been very beneficial to Philadelphia, and it raises our profile in a variety of ways.
Absolutely. When we rebranded, our tagline now for Sister Cities International is connect globally, thrive locally. And how, can you give us some examples, Mayor Strickland, of how that's affected Tacoma?
Absolutely. So to Mayor Nutter's point about the expectations that the people we represent have of us, when you talk about doing something internationally or even traveling, that is often looked down upon as your mayor, because they think in addition to being in your office 18 hours a day, that you have a bucket of asphalt in your trunk and that you drive around the city filling potholes on demand. And so, and I'm joking when I say that, but there's an expectation that local citizens have of mayors.
You don't do that?
Well,
I don't even, explain to me what a pothole is.
Oh,
craters.
Not
But I
sure.
think, one of the things that ends up happening too, and every city budget has been strained lately because of lack of resources and demands that go up. So when we're looking at budgets, some of the first things that people tend to want to put on the chopping block, sister cities, international travel, those types of activities. And what I say to people is, if we want to attract more investment to our city, if we want to raise our profile, these are things we have to invest in. And so as mayor, I have absolutely committed myself to making sure that Tacoma has a sister city program that's strong as long as I have this job. That's absolutely essential. Yeah. Now, when we talk about why this is important, the things that you can do, it's really about demonstrating to the people you represent how they benefit from this. And I tell people this is an opportunity to bring tourism into our city. It's an opportunity to bring outside money into our city. And it's a chance to raise our profile. So when more people hear about you, that's better for everyone. And specifically, one of the things that's worked really well for me is our relationship that we have with Fuzhou, which is our sister city. Now, when I first met the mayor of Fuzhou about 5 years ago, when I first became mayor, he sheepishly said to me, well, Mayor, we're a small Chinese city, so we're not like some of these big cities. And I said, oh, well, what's your population?
Right.
5 million.
Right.
And so even, relatively speaking, everyone has a very different idea of what's large and what's big, but we've had a very strong relationship with them. And so strong that they actually sent us material to build a ting. And a ting is a very beautiful temple that was built. They sent workers over to work with our workers in Tacoma. So we have this Chinese reconciliation park on Tacoma's waterfront with material from our sister city. When I was there about a month ago, I was there and I was invited to be a guest speaker at their Maritime Silk Road Conference because we wanted to talk about the importance of trade and ports and how that benefits everyone globally. Well, while I was in Fuzhou, some investors in Shanghai heard I was going to be in China, so they invited me to come speak to them. So I'm at this conference in Shanghai talking to some investors, and they say to me, well, we're going to be in the Seattle area later this summer. Why don't you join us for a meeting? So my relationship with my sister city in Fuzhou turned into a meeting in Shanghai. The Shanghai group is going to be in Seattle, and they've invited me to meet with them. So look at those 3 different activities that took place because of a longstanding sister city relationship. So these relationships do matter. And I remind people, too, that you don't take a trip over there and then end up with a $1 billion investment the next week. It takes time to cultivate these relationships. And that's very hard work when you are in the business of politics, where people like to point to things they built as markers of success. And so again, it takes time, you cultivate it, but you have to make the case for your local constituents about how they can benefit from this, and they really can.
Brad, now you're chair emeritus of Sister Cities, so you've seen a number of things happen, not just in Carbondale or Illinois, but all over the world. Can you give us some examples?
Well, I think we have 2 great mayors that are talking about the need for mayors to get out, to develop these relationships, and that's really what Sister Cities International has done since 1956 when President Eisenhower had the White House summit on citizen diplomacy and saying we needed to engage citizen diplomats to go around the world And in 1956, it was a lot more difficult to spread the message of a Tacoma or a Philadelphia or a Frisco, Texas, or a Muscatine, Iowa. Today, the president of China knows Muscatine, Iowa, because he visited there. Now, in this setting, we are able to access millions of people around the world simultaneously. But when Sister Cities began, that wasn't the case. And so we needed to get out, and we still need to get out, and we can see successes from those relationships. I borrow this phrase, but I say it all the time, that in order to see eye to eye, you have to first meet face to face. And it seems pretty simple, but that's what we're talking about. That's the relationship that results in a meeting that may bring in an industrial plant to a community. And we see these successes all over the United States. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes some initiative, and it takes a desire to want to reach out and understand what the community you're representing domestically has to offer, what the potential is, and what you can leverage internationally. And some things will happen by chance and by luck, but others by hard work. And we all find the harder we work, the luckier we get. But I think Sister Cities International has a place in economic development, cultural exchange, technical trade, artistic cultural exchanges, and just greater global awareness as we look to this social good in a global economy. So we're hearing some success stories. There are thousands more out there, and I think we all want to maybe have an opportunity to get some questions and answers, or questions, and maybe provide some answers from the audience on these topics.
I think that's a great segue. Thank you, Brad. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it's and being president of Sister Cities, I've seen some remarkable examples. We were talking last night. The University of Toledo, Ohio. The president of the university was walking out on campus, and he was determined to make his campus more diversified. He wanted to see people from different areas come out to Toledo, Ohio. Well, someone said, well, how about all those sister cities we have? And he said, that's a great idea. So they give in-state tuition to anyone who comes to the University of Toledo from any one of their sister cities. And what it has done, not just for the university, but for Toledo, has made it a place where people now say in China, well, I want to go visit Toledo.
Right.
And why do they want to go visit Toledo? Because, well, so-and-so's son went to the University of Toledo, and they had a great time, and they went to visit. It's developing those relationships. We have many, many stories, and actually one of my best parts of my day is going through all the stories every day from our sister cities around the world of what's happening. And let's be frank. You want business, you have to build a relationship.
Right.
And most countries around the world do not have legal systems such as the United States. And business is done through government. So you have to be there talking to them and building a relationship. People want to meet your families. They want to see what your town is like. They want to see how you're received. And then that's when they want to do business.
Juan, Mary, of course, you're absolutely right. And I just think that certainly many of the mayors get it. I think people in cities all across the United States of America, when you hear, about a Sister Cities program, I mean, this is not like when you were, 5 years old and, you're like wanting a buddy, or you're, at camp, or let's hold hands walking across the street. I mean, it's not like a cute, nice thing. A Sister Cities program should be really about serious business and business opportunity and exposure, the kind of relationships and the one point leading to the next point and the next point that Mayor Strickland talked about. I mean, we have Hyundai Rotem in Philadelphia. Incheon, Korea is one of our sister cities. They knew about Philadelphia because we have this relationship. They build rail cars. They built them for us, and they build them for other people. That's putting people to work. And again, it's about jobs. It's about economic opportunity. So, I mean, I think we have to, put a finer point and definition on what sister cities are all about. It's not about junkets. It's not about, oh, let me fly over there and just kind of hang out, for a while. When we went to, the UK-Israel trip was over, we left on the 1st, back on the 11th. I mean, we had 50 different meetings and engagements in that time in 4 different cities. London, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Bethlehem. Met the mayors and top elected officials in every one of those cities. I mean, this was an action-packed schedule, and we put out a schedule so people could see what was going on. I mean, we're not just, kind of hanging out on the beach. I mean, this is about work. And as the mayor again said, and you're generally not going to come back unless you've done a whole lot of work in advance. It's something you've been working on for a long period of time.
Years.
You come back with a contract, I mean, like something's going on. You've really done well. It is about developing that relationship over time, many, many meetings, a whole lot of follow-up. And in our world, most elected officials, especially mayors, are term limited. So time is the most precious resource you're ever going to have. Do I spend my time on this? Do I spend my time on that? The public wants instant results. If you tell someone you're going to fill a pothole or pick up their trash, they actually would like to see that done in the next day or so. I went on this trip. Well, okay, well, where's the contract?
Yeah.
How many jobs did you bring back?
Right.
No, that'll take a little while. And then 3 years later, you may make some announcement. Everyone will forget that you went on that trip 3 years ago, and then suddenly this just happened. The world doesn't work that way. So I think we have to make sure that people truly understand what a sister city relationship is about and what it can be.
Well, and I think also too, I mean, a lot of our focus during this discussion has been about jobs and economic development. But Sister Cities really started as more of a cultural and educational exchange. And I still think that is absolutely important because we have a responsibility as elected officials and as really people in our communities to make sure that we're raising global citizens. So we have a very big forum every year for our high school students who are interested in international relations. And it's hosted by our Sister City group. We all get together, and we really have an opportunity for our students to learn that there's a whole world out there. I wish every student in America had a chance to study abroad 3 months. I mean, that would be the most amazing experience. But we have to raise global citizens because everyone else in the world is raising global citizens, but we aren't doing it so well. So it's an opportunity for us as in the United States to become more sophisticated in making sure that the next generation really understands that there's a whole world out there and we're all connected to it.
Absolutely. So I think we're going to take some questions now.
Yes, I just wanted to first say welcome to Austin, London, Ontario, and Cape Town.
Wow.
They just joined our live stream. And apparently we have now over 6 million impressions, and we're trending on social media. So I think it was all happening just a few minutes ago. I'll kick us off with a question. Tell me, what can sister city relationships do that traditional diplomacy can't do? Do you have knowledge of sister city partnerships that have happened with cities where our formal diplomatic corps cannot go or cannot?
Well, actually, I think Mayor Strickland does. She has a very strong, vibrant relationship with Cienfuegos, Cuba.
We do. So when I first became mayor, I looked at the list of sister cities, and Cienfuegos, Cuba is one of our sister cities, one of our probably more active sister cities, and it is about arts and culture, and that is fantastic. About 2 years ago, we had an orchestra come from Cienfuegos to perform in Tacoma at the Pantages Theater. That was the first time in probably 50 years that an orchestra traveled outside of Cuba to come to America to perform. And so there's some exciting things happening. And we do it through our university. So the University of Washington, Tacoma actually serves as the agent that helps facilitate this type of an exchange. But it's very popular. People love it. And it's an opportunity to really see a place that most Americans don't even have a chance to visit.
I invite everybody who has a question to just come over. Don't be shy. I'm going to just have one more question from Peter. What does it mean, Mayor Natter, to have one of the fastest growing millennial crowds? And
Good question.
what does that mean for the city?
Well, I mean, it's meant a couple things. One, it is a significant contributing factor to population growth in Philadelphia. As I mentioned, unfortunately, since literally the 1950s, we've had population loss. But what it also means is you have this younger, vibrant, innovative crowd, mostly higher educated, who are working. They're bringing a certain additional nightlife, day life and nightlife to Philadelphia. Many are entrepreneurs, and so we've really focused significantly on the entrepreneur sector, created something called Startup PHL, borrowed an idea, now be more serious, borrowed an idea from then Mayor Bloomberg in New York, put out $3 million of the city's money in an RFP, said you have to match whoever's going to manage it, because that's really not kind of what we do for a living. Match that $3 million at least, and make investments in the entrepreneur sector, almost all of whom are younger folks in Philadelphia. They communicate better than, no disrespect to, AT&T, Verizon, whatever your carrier may be. Young people have a way of communicating that is quite unique, and generally not using their phones to make phone calls. So the communication about art, culture, the creative economy in Philadelphia is actually driving even more young people to the city. By the job growth in Philadelphia, we're able to retain more of these young people. And so their presence in Philadelphia really does help to shape not only the civic scene, but I think increasingly they will influence the political scene in the city of Philadelphia, many of whom coming from different places and really helping to break down some cross-cultural barriers that the city has experienced for some time. So it's been great for us.
My name's Jan Duplain. I'm here at the Reagan Building. Thank you. It's been an excellent panel. I was sitting here thinking about the challenges that you have when you come home, and your local citizens are saying, "What were you doing in these different places?" Do you take, when you go on these trips, do you have a delegation where you would take somebody from the Chamber of Commerce, where you would take a local media person, so that, and tweeting the whole time and social media, so that it's not just surprise, we're back, and well, what did you do? But that it's been, thank you.
Yes. We, for the UK-Israel trip, the Philadelphia Inquirer sent a reporter from start to finish. There were virtually daily stories, and lit up social media, and a great communication enterprise set up between Desiree, who's our Director of Communications, and folks back home. We took 10 business people from Philadelphia on the UK portion of the trip. 2 of those folks joined another 10, all on their own, who then went on the Israel portion of the trip. And those folks are now doing business back and forth and developing their own relationships based on which trip they participated in. Quoted in the newspaper, talked about the event. It was a resounding success back home, and folks understood why we were there, what we were doing. We published a schedule every day of the different meetings and activities, and so it was very much a part of what was going on in Philadelphia with that particular trip, and that's our model.
Yes. No, I will say it's really important to think very, very strategically about your delegation and its size. And the reason I say that is that I have been invited on trade missions with different organizations, and if you're traveling with a group of 75 people and you're the mid-sized city, you're not going to get a lot of play. So for me, when I travel, I'm very, very deliberate and intentional about who comes with me and what we do. And as Mayor Nutter said, when you are on the ground, they keep you busy 16 hours a day. From the minute you wake up till the minute you go to bed, your schedule is completely packed. And so it's really about communicating clearly so people know what you're up to, but also understanding, being very intentional about who's part of your delegation so it all works in your favor.
And it adds credibility,
Yep.
quite frankly, to the trip and the purpose. So when Nancy worked with us on the China trip, having others there, having the orchestra there, having other groups and organizations, it becomes more real for folks. And they see that, again, it's not just you're, halfway around the world and why didn't my trash get picked up? It's, these are the things that are going on. You have other legitimate people with their own reputations, and they're making things happen at the same time. And so I think it shapes the focus and makes it that much more crisp and understandable as to what's really going on.
And managing expectations is important going in as you publicize what the schedule is going to be, who you're meeting with. what you're looking to establish and what you're hoping to come out of, so that when you return, you don't have the what did you do? Where's the business behind you? The 500 new jobs. But communicating with the public is very important. Any mayor can spend 3 months in the state capitol and accomplish nothing. 3 weeks over a term in elective office in their sister cities, building relationships, seeking economic partnerships, fostering cultural and educational exchanges will result in a lot more coming back to those cities. And it's how you put that word out and how you educate and communicate with your population.
So earlier it was mentioned having 7, as many as 12 sister cities. How would you go about creating a new sister city relationship in terms of deciding which international cities might be strategic for you and then establishing a strong relationship once that is in place?
Well, I think for us, I mean, at the moment, so our last sister city relationship was created in 1992. That was way before I was mayor. I was just actually becoming a member of Philadelphia City Council. And I'm not anticipating for the moment creating a new sister city relationship because, quite frankly, we haven't done enough with the 7 that I have. And so, I mean, I think it's not about how many. And, you know, for us, 7 is fine. And the mayor, you know, probably didn't create all 12 in her tenure. So, you know, we have what we have. I want to do well with those. But it doesn't mean that I can't, you know, work with folks in London. They're not a sister city, but, I mean, I'm going to London. It was through the ambassador here in Washington that we have a growing relationship with Qatar. And out of that relationship, Qatar Airways became the first new foreign carrier in Philadelphia in a dozen years. And so now we have direct service because we developed this relationship. So we don't have a sister city relationship with Doha, but we have direct service to Doha and a new carrier in Philadelphia. So, I mean, you know, so I believe in relationships. And it's not just, you know, kind of signing a piece of paper, hey, nice meeting you, and maybe I'll see you 5 years from now. So I want to go, I want to have a more in-depth relationship with the 7 that I have, rather than just trying to spread broad and say, hey, we've got 25 sister cities. There's no way you can manage that. I mean, it's like impossible.
And I will say that in terms of Tacoma, you know, we've had sister cities in existence. The 12 I discussed, one was started in the 60s. And so they've been around for a long time. So the one sister city that started under my watch was Biot, France, which is a small seaside tourist village in the south of France. And they do glass blowing. And Tacoma has a museum of glass, and we specialize in glass blowing. So there was an artistic connection there that has worked really well for us. But I think there's something really interesting about, I think, the future of sister cities. Typically, it has been citizen-driven. So you have someone in your community who is really interested in a specific city. They get their friends together or similar interested parties. They come to my office, they apply for it, and they say, can we have a sister city? One of the things that I think that we need to do better as leaders of cities is consolidate and align resources. Most of us have sister cities organization, a World Trade Center, perhaps a World Affairs Council, and an economic development board or a chamber that kind of dabbles a bit in international stuff. These organizations, especially the sister cities and the World Trade Centers, in my opinion, tend to be underfunded, under-resourced. So you have people trying to kind of dabble in these things, but there's no cohesive agenda. So one of the things that I'm going to work on this year as mayor is coming up with a Mayor's Commission on International Relations. We're going to pull everyone together and say, okay, what is our agenda for the next 2 years? What is everyone's respective role in this? And 2 things. Do we have current sister city relationships that we need to revive and leverage? And are there other sister city relationships we should pursue? That way we're all going in the same direction, we're pooling our resources, and we're supporting each other. Because I guarantee you that most cities in America don't necessarily have this cohesive strategic plan. And when we pull these together, then we're all going in the same direction, and everyone has a very specific and meaningful role about how you achieve goals.
I just wanted to say this has been an amazing panel. We're running out of time. We have 4 more minutes, but we have a couple more questions, and I just wanted to say welcome to Nairobi. Just joined us.
So you guys have been discussing the importance of cultural, educational, and business exchanges. I was wondering more about the sort of humanitarian exchange. I mean, the label Sister City implies, you know, familial sort of relationship. So, I mean, how do you guys react when other sister cities go through some sort of crisis, some natural disaster, some sort of, and that, I mean, I think that it's a great way to gain exposure by, helping out different cities.
I think that's, and Brad can also say something about this. That's when you find how mutually beneficial these relationships can be. And we have a couple of examples.
Yeah, humanitarian work is very important in sister cities, and anytime a natural disaster happens, there's obviously a lot of attention and focus on it. We have seen in my own city, we have 3 sister cities, but in 2004 with the tsunami, we raised $50,000 in 3 weeks, and I took a check over to the state secretary in Delhi, India, and presented that as just an outreach to, here's a little bit of money to help do whatever you're going to be doing in your coastal communities. We saw that in Japan with Californian cities and West Coast cities raising money to help. And so there is an immediate response because, just like Mayor Strickland said, there's usually a relationship that is well-rooted in some personal connection. And so they know people. These are friends. We have developed relationships, and they are family-type relationships. And so there is humanitarian aid. As an international organization, we've just come off of some major programs, our African Urban Poverty Alleviation Program funded by the Gates Foundation, to work with cities on the continent of Africa, partnering with domestic U.S. cities that have sister city partnerships on the continent of Africa in building wells, developing hospital infrastructure, creating resources that attack the humanitarian needs. And so that is a piece of it, and that's not necessarily a subsidiary piece. It's front and center while we develop economic relationships, while we have cultural exchanges, while we do educational exchanges and promote interaction at that level. So it's a very important piece.
And just one example that was amazing to me, New Orleans has sister city in Japan. Their sister city in Japan, when Hurricane Katrina hit, helped to garner a group of people over in Japan to raise $40 million to send to New Orleans. So we also, the Midwest floods. There's a sister city in Algeria that sent over money to rebuild a main street in one of our Midwest cities. So it's definitely mutually beneficial, these relationships. We also just started with Gates Foundation trilateral relationships, which is kind of interesting. Cities in the U.S. that have sister cities in China and sister cities in Africa are building trilateral relationships and doing trade missions between all 3 and working on projects in the African sister city together and becoming much closer. And it's amazing how beneficial that can be to people's perceptions of what they think their African sister city is doing or their Chinese sister city is doing.
And one example I will give is not necessarily a big humanitarian crisis, but we have a sister city in South Africa, George, South Africa. And I remember a few years ago, there was this desire to really try and deal with domestic violence that was happening. So we had a group of women in Tacoma who were very tied to George visit their city and really talk about some of the practices we were employing here in Tacoma to really think about, how do we deal with domestic violence, how do we get people to step forward and talk about it. So there are many ways that we can help people outside of the whole conversation of, trade, tourism, and economic development.
In 1 minute.
Good luck. It's a heavy mandate. Thank you so much for a great panel. My name is Brian Ackerman. I work with Foreign Policy Magazine based here in Washington. I wanted to ask 2 questions, one directed specifically to Sister Cities International, and that is, do you do any systematic metrics and outcome analysis for business development based on these trips? It's something that I think it's probably very frustrating to say, you won't see the results for this for 3 years from now. But if you can show that data over time in a systematic and standardized way, that could be really effective. And I'm sure there's plenty of challenges that go along with that, but there must be some way to track it. And I'm wondering if
we are right in the process right now of developing a program called Measures That Matter, because we affect tens of thousands of people around the world. Unfortunately, being a very citizen diplomacy group run at small towns and by small nonprofits, we haven't been counting those numbers, and that's very unfortunate because over the 58 years that we've been, I can't even tell you how many tens, hundreds of thousands of people that have been affected by it.